Hey folks, Jesse Bayer here of Abundant Living Ecuador. Thursday, October 5th, 2017. I've been sort of out of commission with videos and, I did one podcast, but I was traveling for a while and haven't made a ton of videos recently. But there's some important things that's happened recently in Ecuador that definitely are worth knowing about if you're, interested in the country. Got a handy-dandy little microphone recently, a little $20 microphone when I went to the States recently, and hopefully that'll improve the sound quality a bit, although I have yet to tackle the terrible acoustics in this office. It's a lot of glass and and metal and concrete, so you get a lot of echo, perhaps one day. Anyhow, again, Jesse Bayer, Abundant Living Ecuador. I want to make a video for you on what's happening here politically and with tax policy, because there's a lot of things going on. So the very, very 2-second version of the history on that stuff here, and I'll start with the tax stuff. So political tax stuff actually it's kind of connected, so we'll hit them both at the same time. So Ecuador has a long history of political, social, and monetary and economic instability, and that sort of changed recently in recent history. So, dollar collapsed at the turn of the century, and Ecuador dollarized. I said dollar currency collapsed. The sucre, Ecuador dollarized, and then still had several more years of political instability up until 2007 when Rafael Correa took power. And then since 2007, you've had both political and monetary stability. Billions of dollars in infrastructure in those years, 2007 onward. So you had infrastructure come up to world-class standards. You had again, stability, and you had a good economy for most of those years from 2007 onward. Now, there was an election this year. I believe the runoff was in April, I think, if I remember correctly, of this year. And, Rafael Correa, who had been in president for 10 years, his term was up, and his former vice president was elected president. A very controversial election, many accusations of fraud and evidence of fraud, but nonetheless was elected from the same party and took power. Since then, there has been a huge, and I'm just talking on the surface. We could have a conversation another day about how much of this is real and how much of it is show, and that's a whole nother topic. But on the surface, there's been a big fissure, a big divide that's taken place within the party of Alianza País, the party of the current president, and of Rafael Correa, the former president. So the current president, Lenin Moreno, and the current president and the former president, are very much butting heads. Lots of accusations, and just recently, the vice president of the current president, who was also the vice president of the former president, was jailed on bribery charges, fraud, basically. Corruption, basically, but bribery specifically, in the Obredecht scandal. So the Obredecht scandal that rocked Latin America and certainly Ecuador now has the current. They just replaced him, but the current vice president of Ecuador in jail, indicted on bribery charges. So they now have another vice president, a temporary vice president, a woman who's I forget her name, but she was the secretary of housing, basically in English would be the translation, and that's where we're at politically. And so you've got a very interesting time here politically. But the part I really want to get to is taxes. So the former president Correa, and this again, sort of circles back to the history a little bit. Again, did a lot of good things. I don't think anyone can dispute that, but also went very far socialist on a lot of policies. And that hurt the economy to a huge degree towards the end of his presidency. So the first number of years, he was basically just doing infrastructure and stability, and, things were okay. And then, there was a lot of wasted money and government grew huge, but it was working. towards the last 2 to 4 years of his presidency, he really went outrageous on some of the policies and created an environment, a tax and regulatory environment where it just became difficult to do anything. There was a lot of capital flight, and these years, that would have started like 2014, 2015, and then into 2016. A lot of paralysis, fear, capital flight, government involved in everything, so making it very difficult. Job market obviously very bad because when there's no economic activity and construction is not happening and businesses can't function, obviously there's the jobs, the job market gets soft. So there was a couple of bad years there towards the end of his presidency, namely 2015 was the really bad year. 2014 was like flat, and 2016 was basically flat as well. But not a good year. I mean, they say that we're in a crisis, and one of those policies that Correa implemented was the Ley de Plusvalía, which is capital gains taxes on real estate, and absolutely mind-bogglingly outrageous policy that was implemented. And when he actually first announced that law, the proposal, the country went in nationwide protests and they had to shelve it, but then they passed it between Christmas and New Year's of 2016, and it is on the books. So Moreno gets elected. Moreno gets elected and is president, and he since he was elected, he has made many verbal. He has signaled verbally that he's going to move away from that sort of extreme left policy of Correa. I mean, he's also left, the current president, but move away from that sort of extreme stuff and pull government back a little bit, get rid of some of the taxes and so forth. But it's all been verbal up until now, and so words are cheap. So who it was hard to say what was really going to happen. Most Ecuadorians actually believed that was going to happen, and it turns out it looks now that they're right. So anyhow, we now have in our possession, they've been announced, the questions for a referendum, a public vote on several matters, but one of them, which is most crucial by far, other than term limits, which means Rafael Correa can't come back again and be president. They're going to vote on that, but beyond that, one of the things that they're going to vote on is getting rid of the La Ley de Plusvalía, the capital gains tax on real estate. And Moreno supports getting rid of it. His former opponent in the election, Guillermo Lasso, also supports getting rid of it. I mean, he sort of campaigned around those kinds of things. And it certainly, for all intents and purposes, I mean, it looks very much like that will happen. If that happens, we've got boom years ahead here for real estate, for development, for construction. It's going to be a very good economic time here, barring the unforeseen, of course, but it'll be a very good time here economically. And if they do a few other things, like get rid of the exit tax, the capital flight tax, and just rein it in a little bit and let people work, you're going to have some boom years ahead. So really good news on that. I'll update you guys if and when that referendum takes place. But good news. It seems that Moreno is going to follow through on some of his verbal some of the things he said, and that's great. If they get rid of this tax, construction will pick up and jobs will come back and money will come back, investment dollars will come back, and it'll support prices and it'll support the economy, of course, in general, as more people will have money to be out and about doing things. So very good news there. And so that's really the update. Again, Jesse Bayer of Abundant Living Ecuador. If you want to check us out, you can go to our website, abecuador.com. That's A as in apple, B as in boy, Ecuador.com. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Please subscribe if you like the video, and enjoy the rest of your day.